Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our campus conversation with President Dallal. As you might notice, we have a bit of a different format this month because President Dallal wanted to share with us his idea of the strategic priorities of the university in the coming phase. So we thought we'd give him an opportunity, a chance to lay out this vision to us, then take a few questions, both from the audience as well as people who are joining us from Zoom. And at the front row, we have the senior leadership of the university with us who are also ready to answer questions. We're sure that some of you also have timely questions that have to do with the general economic crisis, the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, and our daily lives, as it were. But first, let's give President Dallal a chance to lay out the strategic vision that he has for the priorities of the university. President Dallal.
Thank you, Dr. Elbendary. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for this opportunity. As you said, it's a slightly different format, but everyone is here, and I will call on them to answer all the difficult questions. I hope we'll post this, I hope we make sure that we circulate as much as we can the recording of this meeting, because it is important. We really want our whole community to be part of this conversation. It's not the first time we have this conversation, of course, but we're articulating it, we're shaping it, we're defining it as we move forward. So, as you all know, pretty much from the day I arrived here on campus, in my first week at AUC, we had a strategic retreat for the board to talk about our identity in the second century, to talk about our strategic priorities, the direction we want to take into the future. In fact, even before I came to AUC, we were part of articulating. There was an effort to submit a loan proposal that I've discussed with everyone, the DFC loan proposal, which is moving forward. We've been working on it for 18 months now, or 17 or 16. But we submitted the proposal. The deadline was the end of September 21, and we had to articulate strategic priorities. And we did, tentative strategic priorities and directions we want to take. A key thing about these strategic priorities, which we've been discussing and further refining over the last almost year and a half, a key thing about these priorities is that we really didn't reinvent the wheel. We were drawing on things that have been in discussion on this campus and have been, elaborated on in a variety of different ways. They were not put together collectively into one coherent program. And even now, we're calling this a strategic priorities roadmap. It reflects some ambitions and aspirations. It's work. It continues to be work in progress that we'll continue to work on. So the first important thing to keep in mind is that these ideas didn't come out of vacuum. They came out from very real ideas that have been generated, discussed, deliberated on campus over the last few years. In many cases, there were proposals that were articulated, that were developed, and then weren't followed up on. In other cases, there were different sorts of things. The other thing which is important about this strategic roadmap is that in some respect, we had critical issues that we were facing, and the need to articulate our direction is connected to responding to these critical requirements, critical junctures in our development. You're all familiar, I've shared with you on previous occasions, the issues that we were facing on the land front. Hopefully we are in a better position. I think we are in a much better position now to begin to chart a road forward to address the challenges pertaining to the remaining part of the land and developing our campus. But in a way, we were under pressure to move quickly to articulate our strategic vision, a sort of a strategic vision, not a full-fledged strategic plan. That requires 2 or 3 years. Remember, on multiple occasions, I did say that developing a full-fledged strategic plan takes a long time. We cannot afford to wait a long time. We really had, and we also had a repertoire of ideas that were in circulation within our campus. Uh, a third thing is that these strategic ideas, again, they relate to things that have been articulated in the past. They draw on real capacities that we have here at AUC, the real capacities that are demonstrated or potential capacities that could be developed further. So these are some of the things, some of the sort of imperatives that drove us as we started looking at these strategic priorities. And then a fourth point, which is very important. And I talked about it in the last campus conversation. I talked about it in my meetings with the Senate. I talked about it in on multiple occasions. We're facing challenges. Higher education in general is facing challenges. And here, us in Egypt, we're facing challenges. Devaluation is a big challenge. We've had 3 waves of devaluation over the last year. If we focus exclusively, we have to focus on these issues. We have to spend a lot of time trying to solve problems related to devaluation and other challenges. I mean, the land issue is a challenge in its own right. We have to work on these things and come up with solutions. But if this is the only thing we do, then we will drown in problem solving. We need to keep our eyes on the ball. We need to remember, to remind ourselves why we do the work we do, why we spend the time that we spend. It's because there are great things that this university is doing and even greater things that this university can do. And this is what drives everything that we work on. So these are some of the, is this too much in way of introduction before I start talking about?
No, you're supposed to be telling us right now what are the priorities.
Okay.
You don't need to introduce them.
Okay, so no, but this introduction is important. And you can ask me more about these issues later. So what we did over the course of articulating and refining, over the course of the various conversations we've had over the last few months, what we've did is we've articulated 4 pillars, 4 values, if you will, 4 driving principles that are behind the specific initiatives that we think of. Specific initiatives have to relate to capacity. Specific initiatives have to also be realistic and achievable. But before we think of these 2 things, we really need to think of why we're doing that. I mean, what are the key principles, pillars? What are key pillars of our identity that make us put the effort into these initiatives? And these pillars are 4. And we've sort of refined them over and again, I'm happy to keep this work this as work in progress. But there are 4 pillars. The first is a student-centered culture, a culture that focuses on qualitatively different training for our students, set of services that we provide to our students, both in terms of the academic programs that we offer them, but also in terms of the environment which ensures that they have better chances at succeeding at this university. This obviously is something that distinguished over the years AUC from other institutions at the regional level. But we can never take things like this for granted. This type of work, we need to remind ourselves of our mission, of our commitment, and keep on coming back to this sort of, revisiting the types of services that we provide to our students to ensure that we are living up to the commitments that we think we value at the university. And again, there are specific ways. I'll give examples in a minute. The second driving principle is academic excellence. But again, I mean, I wouldn't think any university would say we're not committed to academic excellence. This is a basic commitment. But what academic excellence means in the context of a university like AUC is different from what academic excellence means in a different university which operates on a larger scale and so on. Academic excellence has very specific meanings in our context, and this is something that we've tried to articulate in the multiple initiatives that we're undertaking. A third key value that we've articulated over the course of conversations we've had is our focus and the distinctive role we can play in terms of shaping the future of work in Egypt and at the regional level. And let me just elaborate a little bit on this. AUC has a school of continuing education which is almost as old as the university itself. We have very impactful executive education programs that we've delivered, and we've delivered them systematically and structurally. We train every year 20 to 30,000 students. In addition to our 7,000 students, graduate and undergraduate, degree program pursuing students, we have a lot of work that we do. We have multiple successful templates that we implement to train the workforce, to train professionals, to train even students who want to have a good academic career and so on. Egypt needs upskilling and reskilling of the current workforce so that this workforce would more efficiently serve the massive development program underway in Egypt. Egypt needs a transformed workforce. This is something which is recognized across the board. I think there's almost consensus in every quarter that we think of. And we're in a unique position to contribute to this process. So when we talk about the future of work, we talk about our ability to scale up, our ability to train students from 20 to professionals from 20 to 30, not degree pursuing students, but professionals who are working, but they want to learn more so that they can transform their own careers and their own lives, but also contribute more efficiently to the development project underway in Egypt. So this is another major area of again, we're building on a historic position that we've occupied, but we want to take it to the next level. And the fourth, again, we're building on what characterized us over the years in Egypt, our civic engagement. Civic engagement is something which is in our DNA. We do it in so many different ways, but we want to be much more deliberate about it. We want to focus it as we move forward. We want to make sure that what we're doing is very deliberate, not just random. So we want to continue with the various diverse activities in this area, but we want to identify the key areas that we want to focus on, and this is something that we need to do and continue to do in a more effective way. All the projects, no, you want me to stop?
No, I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, you mentioned that these are all issues that we've been talking about for years, but still I'm not very clear about the process. How did we arrive, especially not just at the core areas, but at the secondary areas? And I ask you this because with the last strategic plan, I think there were consultations and meetings and task forces, etc., but many people in the end felt left out and alienated by what came out, by the language of the strategic plan and by the lack of input in the process. So if you can tell us very briefly, how did you arrive at this? What's the process for articulating it?
Yeah, I have a role to play in this, but I didn't arrive on this at these priorities. These, as I said, we drew on a range of earlier studies and a range of conversations across campus. The thing we cannot afford the luxury of taking our sweet time to develop some set of strategic priorities. We really needed to articulate them because we had the challenge of the land, we had the risk of drowning in problem solving and putting off fires without actually having something, a larger cause to work towards. We had the risk of, we think about things and we don't do anything about them. And by the way, we're moving relatively quickly. I mean, the concerns that I get are on two opposite extremes. On the one hand, you're moving very quickly. On the other hand, how did you arrive at these things quickly? We're able to arrive at these things quickly because we had a big repertoire and we have examples of success. There is clarity around this. And have we taken our time? These are headlines. It's work in progress. There is so much more work that we need to do on each of these areas to operationalize them. So it's the beginning of articulating a strategic direction, a strategic roadmap, as it were, but there is more work that needs to be done. And some of these initiatives we'll be able to implement faster than others because there is more programmatic work that has been done. The one luxury we cannot afford is to take our time, to work sequentially on these projects because there are pressing issues. There are pressing realities that we need to adapt to. And if I may add one more very important thing. Higher education is transforming very, very rapidly. Academic institutions are normally very conservative. They're slow to change. We cannot afford to do this. We and all other higher education institutions in the world. There are universities at the risk of closing down. There are different modes of delivery of higher education and pre-university education which are in consideration, and they would radically, in some cases, there are suggestions of radical transformation. This is a conversation which we have to be part of. And if we're not, we run the risk of becoming obsolete. Our university, like many, many other universities, runs the risk of becoming obsolete if we don't jump on the bandwagon and start thinking systematically and proactively, if we don't remain ahead of the curve, which is why one of the initiatives, we haven't really done much on that front, but we will, I promise you we will. We're gonna push this initiative, is the future, the programs of the future. We need to rethink our programs, not just in terms of their content, because content is changing, but also in terms of the forms and the modalities of delivery. We need to think systematically. This is a challenge for us. If we don't deliver on it, we run the risk of becoming obsolete, and we cannot. So we have challenges because of the financial environment in which we operate. We have challenges because of the rethinking of higher education, the value and the format of higher education, the value of education. There are challenges which are universal, and we need to be at the forefront. AUC has always been at the forefront in dealing with these issues. One of the signature contributions of AUC to higher education in Egypt and the region is that it was at the forefront of introducing innovation in higher education, and we need to remain. Now, there is more pressure to do that than ever before.
I think, you're preaching to the choir here. I think we all agree that we do need to move forward, that we can't afford to wait, etc. But let me be honest with you, many people on campus feel we've been talking about this for a very long time, and we've been hearing this talk for quite some time. Can you give us examples of things on the ground that have actually begun changing? Can we see the beginning of a new direction? Because for many people, we see the challenges, many people see the challenges, of course, but they also see that we're still walking down the same sad road we've been walking down for, 10 years or more.
Absolutely. And please feel free to jump in if you have things to contribute, anyone. On the student side, under the general rubric, under the pillar of a student-centered approach to education, revitalizing our commitment to shaping qualitatively different students. We've already put in place a new system, which we'll have to test, by the way. When you come up with anything new, you have to test. We have already put a new system of recruitment of students. We put in place a new system of financially supporting students with multiple, much more nuanced criteria. It's a system that we have to implement, that we have to test, but we've already put that in place. We restructured the support that we provided to the students, and we ensured that we have a setup, a structure that ensures that student life and student academic performance are part of one continuum. This is work that has already been done. We launched the mental health initiative, and there are findings and things that have already been done, but this is work in progress as well. So we initiated a lot of work. We're already implementing it. That work is based, again, it's not something that we invented overnight. That work, there were several university task forces working on various aspects, but we brought them all together, we put it in place, we moved forward. After several years of study, we put them all together and we started initiating. This is on the student side. We have tangible projects, ambitions, aspirational projects that we want to implement, physical projects, if you will. One of these projects is to build new dorms that will provide accessibility to students from the provinces to international students, where not only we would be able to host them on campus, because otherwise they're not non-commuting students, but also we provide them with better opportunities to succeed, places, environments which would relate to their academic. This is one of the 5 projects that we're trying to implement as we move forward. This is a very tangible project. We would have to fundraise for it, we'd have to think, but we have the models, the operational models, and we're going to refine them. We are in the process of refining them, and we're moving forward. So there is work already done, there is more work that needs to be done. In terms of academic excellence, as I said, the biggest rubric for academic excellence is we need to rethink our academic programming. There is if we don't, we run the risk of becoming obsolete. We have to be very systematic about this, including, by the way, but it's only a piece of the subject, including multidisciplinarity. Multidisciplinarity is something, there is hardly anyone who would contest the idea that interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity is essential for the future of higher education. But everyone, all universities struggle with the implementation of interdisciplinarity. How do we structure it? How do we make it? How do you incentivize members of your community to participate and contribute and so on? The structure which enables interdisciplinarity. But this is only one piece. Our existing programs, we need to rethink them. We might need to change the focus. There are emerging fields. There are fields that are becoming obsolete, and there are other fields that are emerging. We need to be part of that conversation, not just as a luxury, as a side show, but this should be at the heart of what we do if we don't want to run the risk of becoming obsolete. Tangible projects. We want to build a new school of design, and this is an area where AUC excels. Again, I didn't invent this. Architecture, AUC excels. The small program in architecture that we have that can only admit 20 students per year is one of the best in the world. It's an amazing program. Our design approach to teaching and learning is a model in its own right. We're part of a global alliance. It's so inspiring for members of our community, faculty, students, and staff. They contribute to it. We want to be much more deliberate about it. This is something good we do. This is something that we need to take to the next level. But we're also adding urban studies. And urban studies, I mean the design of smart cities. I mean the use of data science and artificial intelligence, as well as urban planning, to do two things. To be at the cutting edge of higher education. These programs are needed in the region. They don't exist in the region. There is no smart cities program anywhere in the region. It's a new thing in higher education globally, let alone in the region. And we want to be at the forefront of introducing a program like this. But urban studies is needed in Egypt. I mean, Egypt is undergoing a massive development. And if this undertaking is going to succeed, everyone needs to contribute to it. We will not lead it, but hopefully we'll contribute to its success by producing people in academia who can think systematically about optimizing the operations of cities and so on. This is one program. And the other thing that we want to do, again, building on, and there are studies that were generated in the past, is introducing a technology research and innovation hub. As you all know, we take pride in our university-based accelerator, one of the most successful in the region. We've accelerated startups like Swivel and many other successful, not unicorns yet, but extremely successful. We've contributed to the creation of jobs and so on. We're doing very well on this front. As you know, as we've seen, and this is only an example, it's not an exclusive example, as we've seen in COP, we're doing amazing work in the translation of knowledge and coming up with solutions for real-life problems and bringing the research that we do to have impact, very real impact, meaningful impact on our societies. And we want to scale up our ability to do both. We want to put them under one ceiling conceptually, not just physically, so that not only are we contributing to the translation of knowledge, but we all want to also create models that stand the chance of succeeding in real life. We want to build this. This is another tangible project that's part of our, and by the way, when we talk about these tangible projects, we work on the conceptual and programmatic design. We work on the permits, which is it requires a lot of work, let me put it this way. We work on mobilizing the resources and the funding, and we work on the operational models. And again, we cannot, unfortunately, I wish we could, because I will get a little more sleep. All of us will get a little more sleep. Unfortunately, we cannot have the luxury of working on these things sequentially. We have to work on them at the same time. And the amount of work which is being done is huge, is massive. And we're working on this. Civic engagement, I spoke about the future of work. We've already begun the work. There is so much more that we need to do. And then, and the future of work as well. So there are very tangible projects that we're working on. And I'm sure I'm missing quite a few things. The Road to College program that we launched a couple of weeks ago. This is an amazing example of civic engagement in its own right. I mean, there are other things which are more clearly identifiable, but what more civic engagement can we do than actually providing our country, our society, and not just Egypt, but the majority are in Egypt, of course, with the ability to acquire a language skill and at so many different multiple levels that will enable them to succeed as students, but also to succeed professionally. English is a lingua franca, which is central to the success. This is a major contribution, and as you know, again, this university has been working on this project for more than 100% have been working on this for 2 years. They really spilled their soul into this project. And the outcome, we will have to refine it, but it's out there. In the first couple of weeks of the official, there is 150,000 people who signed up, who I don't know if they will actually enroll, but it's really, it's a big number. These are real things. So it's not, we're not slow in the delivery. If anything, we're moving very fast, but we're moving on multiple fronts, and there will be challenges. But as a community, we need to work together on providing solutions.
I want to give a chance to people in the audience, among the audience, to perhaps ask you questions or ask of the senior leaders questions. And also a reminder for those of you following online, you can also type your questions in the Q&A box.
Just a small, for the record, architecture admits 20 students in the spring, but for the whole year it's 60 students. Okay. We still have a larger demand, and I know people are approaching you and Provost Abdurrahman complaining, but it's 60 per year.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from the hall? I am left with my questions then. So many new programs, yes, and some of them are programs that we've been talking about for a while. You're accelerating them, you're working on them, etc. But what about our old programs, and what about our initiatives that, as you mentioned, oftentimes are stuck with bureaucracy, with lack of infrastructure, whether financial infrastructure, administrative infrastructure, or space? How are we going to make sure that as we are starting new initiatives and new programs and a whole new school, this is not going to negatively affect our existing programs and schools? In fact, how are we going to work on achieving excellence with what we have? And I'm sure this is not new to you. I'm sure in the year and a half or 2 years that you've been here, you've been hearing from people how there is a perception that our quality of education has in fact diminished, decreased, is not where it used to be or where it could be or where it should be. We're not attracting the same caliber of students we want, sometimes in some fields, in some departments, not the caliber of faculty we want. In some fields, in some majors, in some departments, there is an imbalance, let's say, between adjunct faculty and full-time faculty. There are issues with contracts, there are issues with hires. There are graduates of AUC. I mean, I was very happy to see the English language program, and I've been promoting it in my own circles. But those of us who go to class know that very often our graduates actually do not excel in English. They do not live up to the promise that we say we're giving when we give them a BA from AUC. And all you have to do is go on Facebook and read the groups that have to do with AUC.
You'll have to remind me as I answer, because I can't remember all of the questions. And
okay,
so
how are we going
to address them all?
To recap?
Okay.
How are we going to manage to start all those new
Let me start with something visual.
Fixing?
This, the enablers here were at the bottom, but we realized that if we put them at the bottom, they will be hidden by us. So we put them on the side just for usually the enablers, but the enablers are a key piece. We need to work on the enablers. The enablers are essential. It's not just a visual artifact. The enablers are essential, and we've identified these enablers, and we're working on them. We're working systematically on them. And again, you know, on multiple occasions, I've said there are two things that we need to, two key values that we need to work on. One is a culture of student-centered culture, and the other one is a culture of service. And they're related, they're not unrelated. We need to work on that. We need to go back. I mean, this university historically provides a model of institutional excellence. And there is a lot of work that needs, people get comfortable with what they do. They settle in their silos and they're satisfied, and comfort is not good. We need to be driven. We are in a cutthroat environment. We are an environment that presents to us, to generations. I mean, it's not just AUC, it's across the board. There are serious challenges around us. And if we're too comfortable in what we do, too comfortable, it's not that we shouldn't have rights or whatever. If we're too comfortable, if we're not driven, if we're not thinking and rethinking what we're doing, we'll fall back, we'll drift back. The things that you're saying, I agree with you. When there are questions that are being raised, we need to address them. We can't dismiss them. We can't simply say, oh, think of bureaucratic answers. We really need to question ourselves about everything that we do. The answer might be, I mean, the concerns that people have may be sometimes accurate, and we need to provide solutions for them. In other cases, they may be inaccurate, but then we would need to work on the perception. And again, it's not something you do overnight. It's something we need to do consistently. We need to engage collectively, not just I engage to the extent that there are hours in the day. I know that the leadership team does. We all need to do that. We all need to think of this institution, our own personal institution. It's not us versus the university, it's the university. You're the university, we are all the university, and we need to think, to be able to address these issues, we need to work on them systematically. Part of the reason that there is a change, there is a perception that there is probably the quality is dropping, might have to do with the competition, with the multiple opportunities and alternatives that people have. It used to be that there are the national institutions that they provide, that they have their strength in certain area, and there was this one private institution. Now the landscape have changed. There are institutions that are coming in. We need to revisit the value proposition that we offer at this institution. Think about it. Does it still hold? Is it still correct that we have an edge? And if so, what is this edge, and how do we refine it, and how do we communicate to everyone that we're serious about providing a distinctive kind of education? This is number one. Number two, the quality of students that we have. Part of the reform that has been instituted aims at, whether it works or not, we need to assess. We created a system after a lot of internal thinking that hopefully will enable us to recruit better students and provide opportunities for better students to come and afford the education at AUC and succeed at AUC. We put in place this system, and then we'll see hopefully how it works. We'll calibrate it. We'll continue to revisit it. Remind me some of the
No,
points.
but let's take a question from the Zoom attendees. So we have a question that says, what are the time frames for those programs, and how will they be measured and evaluated?
Okay, it's a very good question. And fortunately, I briefly said, without getting into too many details, that now, after almost a year and a half of discussions and negotiations and so on, we have a road forward. I hope it succeeds. I don't want to jinx it. But we have a road forward on the land front. One of the good things about this is that hopefully the current road forward, we have to deliver within a period of 3.5 years or so a certain number of projects, but we don't have to deliver all the projects that we've articulated. So this will give us a little more time. If anything, right now, in some cases, we need more time, not less time. We will work. Look, we have to work immediately. There is no beginning date for working on service or working on excellence. We have to work on these things immediately. The programs of the future, who's going to rethink programs? I'm not going to rethink them. I don't have the expertise. I will try my best to facilitate this conversation. This is something that has to be done by the faculty of the university. We have to think about these issues. But I can tell you, and I will repeat this, I will not tire from repeating this. If we don't do this work, we run the risk of becoming obsolete. And in this competitive environment in which we are operating, the risks that people perceive will become realities. We have to be at the forefront. We have to think proactively. We have to be ahead of the curve. Think proactively about the way we shape the education that we provide. It's not enough to say that we've been the best. We have to remain the best. And there is work that needs to be done to remain the best. to remain relevant, up to date with developments in higher education, plus provide the quality education that we provide. Is there a timeline? Yes, there are different timelines for different things, absolutely. From my perspective, from where I stand, the challenge for me is to have a slightly longer timeline rather, but there are demands that cannot, I mean, if we're dealing with devaluation, we cannot postpone handling devaluation.
So what are we going to do with the devaluation? Are we going to do anything before the end of the year?
This event was supposed to be the first campus conversation, as I announced last time, and we postponed it because devaluation is a big issue, is a big challenge. And I shared last time our approach, but two things. We realized that our intervention so far is ad hoc and transitional. We are intervening to try to mitigate, reduce the impact of devaluation, and we cannot eliminate the impact of devaluation. It's a bigger issue than AUC. But what we can do is to think systematically, to do our best to think systematically about ways to intervene and to mitigate the effect of devaluation in the transitional period. And as I said last time, there is a transitional period and there is the long term. The long term is a bigger challenge. There is even the intermediate, there is next year, the budget for next year. We may need to make decisions, and probably we would still be in a transitional phase for next year. So we need to make decisions. Currently, we're doing analysis. Amir is here, he could shake his head, and we are doing analysis of a wide range of scenarios. Again, the immediate challenges that we need to deal with is the impact of devaluation on our students and the actual tuitions that they need to pay, is the impact on our staff, especially staff who are on the lower scale of the levels of the pay scale, who are paid completely in Egyptian pounds, and the impact of the budget of the university. And we need to balance these things. We really need. And for that, we're doing analysis of multiple scenarios that hopefully will inform the decision that we make. But we remain committed that no student would have to leave the university because they can't afford the education. Not they don't want to pay, they cannot pay. We are committed to that, and we will remain committed to that. And we're thinking, there is nothing off the table. We're thinking of all of the scenarios. We're simulating, we're doing the modeling for what each scenario will translate. And hopefully we'll be able to, there will be some initial results in a matter of weeks, and then of course we need to drill down and we need to take that discussion. The ultimate decision we presented a budget to the board, and the board would have to approve it. We're not waiting till the end, by the way. We're discussing these issues already now. It's an ongoing discussion. So there is a lot of work it's one of the areas where we need to do a lot of work, and we are doing that work. Now, this is just in planning for next year. And I don't think things would have stabilized. So we cannot even begin to think of long-term solutions. We have to be creative, and there are possibilities that we're exploring. I don't know if they will translate into providing the university immediately with alternative revenue streams, but we're exploring the possibility of developing alternative revenue streams, fundraising strategies, but not just fundraising, new partnerships, regional and international partnerships. We've been extremely successful, and we're lucky for that, in attracting grants. Grants, of course, cannot underwrite the budget because grants have designated expenditure. But what grants provide us with sometimes, and many times, in most cases, they provide us with a source of foreign currency, which will also because the availability of currency is a challenge for the university. So we're working now very hard for next year, and hopefully, as we do, we're experimenting with various models that will inform our thinking beyond the immediate challenge of this coming budget cycle.
Are there any updates on fundraising that you'd like to share with us at this moment?
Look, VP Richard Brow, I can easily throw it back on him. He's working very hard on structuring the operation and coming up with a strategy for fundraising. He presented this to the chairs. He's working with the deans. He's working with the trustees. But if I may, before you speak, Richard, the thing about fundraising, many of our, and I've been I've been twice on fundraising trips to the UAE and once to Saudi Arabia already. And of course, I've done some fundraising trips. And again, at a time when we have so much work that we need to do here. And I'm not just, Richard says university presidents spend 70% of their time on fundraising. I cannot do that. We have work that we need to do here, and I'm committed to doing this work. But we've been working on fundraising. The key thing about fundraising, donors have changed. Donors used to give to institutions based on the name of the institutions. There's hardly anyone who's willing to do that. Now, they need to understand what cause are they contributing to. And they also need to have a partnership of sorts. So you need to revisit them. What we've been doing in our visits so far is reconnecting to our older supporters, some of whom are simply no longer interested in not supporting us. They say they're proud of what they've done with AUC, but that's it. If they reach the end of the line and they're interested in other things. Others have new priorities. Invariably, and this is true of the meetings that I had with the foundations in the US, this is true of many of the meetings that we've had in the visits so far. Invariably, people who start by saying our focus has changed when they learn about the possibilities, the sorts of things we're doing here, they not only express interest, they express excitement about the possibility of partnering. But we need to work on it. We need to cultivate it.
We're at the excitement stage. We still haven't borne the fruits of that yet.
We launched the Learning Factory. That's a trustee that we recultivated and donated $1 million for a particular project in the engineering school, 1.2 or 1.27 or something like this $1 million. It is, there are results, but this is continuous work. It doesn't happen with a snap of a finger. There is a lot of opportunity, but I want to, if I may, before giving the floor to Richard, AUC is highly respected. In this visit, I was yesterday and the day before yesterday, we were in a visit meeting with government officials in UAE. AUC is extremely respected, and there is a desire to partner with AUC. This opens great doors. We need to work. This will require a huge amount. In addition to everything that we're doing, it will require a huge amount of work. We need to figure out what this means, how we can partner with in the UAE. Dubai wants AUC to be, they've invited, 40-some universities, international universities, and they, at least some of the key decision makers, seem to think that AUC is the prime institutions with whom they want to partner for quality education. And on some of the projects that we're interested in. We need to articulate this. We need to come up with proposals, and not just one, multiple. And then we need to work on the operational models that will make these things succeed. But there are great opportunities, and they're fundamentally because this is a good university. There is good stuff which is being done here. Yes. We need to turn that into tangible proposals and go out. The other thing about this is there are opportunities for us to project regional impact beyond, not just in Egypt, but beyond Egypt. And, I knew it hypothetically. It's really reassuring to see it in practice when people actually tell you that we want to partner with AUC and as we move forward. Richard, do you want to?
Sure, if you want to update us quickly.
Do you want to stand?
Please, so people can see you.
Hello, I'm Richard Brow, the Vice President of Institutional Advancement, and I've been with AUC since September. As the President mentioned, we are revisiting our operation, we are restructuring, we are recruiting. This is an advertisement. I have 12 wonderful opportunities with a fantastic team. We're specifically looking for fundraisers. We have a shortage of fundraisers, and we are, as the President mentioned, we are traveling to meet with alumni, to meet with donors. There's tremendous opportunity. It's a very, very competitive market because there are many fine institutions. Our donors are located around the world, and AUC has to present itself and compete with some of the finest institutions around the world. We're also developing a culture of philanthropy amongst our alumni. For most universities, the majority of the donations come from the alumni. To be honest with you, although many of our alumni are generous and are supporters, and some of our biggest donors are alumni, there's not enough of a culture amongst our alumni of giving back to the institution. And many of you will remember from a previous campus conversation, the provost mentioned that we subsidize student tuition significantly. The cost of education goes far beyond what our students pay, and we have to teach our students and the parents of our students and our alumni that this university was made possible in large part because of philanthropy, because of the gifts of very generous individuals, and there's an expectation on the part of our alumni that when they can, appropriate to their ability and their inclination, we hope that they will give back so that AUC remains at the forefront of higher education. So as the President said, there's a lot of work to do. We're on the road meeting our largest donors, reconnecting with our alumni. We have 42,000 alumni around the world. They're all over North America. They're all over Europe. We have alumni in Japan. We have alumni all over the Middle East, as well as Egypt. And with the current currency situation in Egypt, we need to be cultivating our alumni overseas because they are not facing necessarily the same pressures. So there's a lot of work to do, but I'm going to make a plug one more time. 12 wonderful vacancies, a fantastic team. If you would like to know more about it, please come and see us. We'd love to tell you about opportunities to work in advancement. So thank you for this opportunity.
We really have what it takes. We just need to act on it.
Yes.
And this is not a small step.
Yes.
We need to, but we have the capacity, we have what it
Absolutely,
takes.
yeah. So we have time for one more question before we move to the, oh, sorry, I called on Hania. I'm sorry, I didn't notice you did. So we can have Hania and Hani, and then we move to the reception. I'm told we have donuts, so.
Thank you, President Dallal. I'm speaking about the research in academic excellence, noting that we have dismantled our infrastructure for social research at AUC. We are not optimizing it. We don't use our IRB to enable people to access the field. We don't give the right training for students to be able to do applied research. We don't have the outposts that we could have to enable students to come, do applied work, development work, social, whether it's engineering, and if you want to have multidisciplinary education, then please revisit that idea of enabling an applied research infrastructure that can be easily made operational to service the cause of multidisciplinarity and of applied work. Thank you.
And let's take Hani's question as well.
Just to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, but we'll talk about it. Absolutely, we'll talk about it. But I have no idea. Right now, I don't.
Hi, I'm so happy that finally we get to talk about strategic priorities, and thank you, President Dallal, for bringing these important questions to campus conversation. So I've been here for some time, and a lot of the slogans on the slide are familiar. And you know, one thing that changed is, of course, your passion and your ability to make this picture something that we could all desire. But at the same time, as a person who's been here for some time, I'm trying to see in what way this is an actual strategic plan or just a different communication strategy. So we talked about interdisciplinarity and clusters 3 plans ago. We talked about Middle East studies 5 plans ago. And then what we see is increasing silos, Middle East studies is starving. And so the question then is, how can you convince the community that this is an actual plan rather than a communication strategy? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be challenging, but it's a really concern. And for me, what I would wanted to hear is more about your reading of the competitive environment that we're in. So, and it doesn't mean that but how do you understand our niche as a EUC, both in Egypt, regionally, and globally? Because that will actually help frame those 4 pillars and help me understand in 5 years where the AUC is going to be, because now I don't know where the AUC is going to be. Final comment is enablers. faculty should be an enabler.
No, faculty is more than enabler.
No, but-
faculty are at the heart of the operation.
Yeah, but-
the enablers are supporters
they're-
of faculty.
But the point is that they are not visible here. And the reason why I say that is because AUC is going to have a problem convincing academically serious people to experience the AUC as a place where they could invest their life projects. Now the AUC is becoming more and more a revolving door. People would want to come, spend a year, and they leave, but nobody is interested in making the AUC a home, an academic home. We need to think about an important dimension of us being in Egypt and being distinct is the question of academic freedom. That's something that faculty worry about. It affects the way we do social sciences, it affects we do all kinds of things. So that's why that would have been something that is important to reflect somehow in understanding of who are we as an institution and where are we going to go. Thank you. Again, I'm grateful for this conversation. It's a good, very important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hani. All important questions. As I see them, there are 4 things that you focused on. The first is the question of, seeing these slogans and, how is it different from before and so on, 3 plans ago and so on. And then the second one has to do with the niche and how do you see us, our realistic position assessment of our and prospects for the future. And then you talked about faculty and you also talked about academic freedom. Well, yes, of course, yeah. But there are 2 things. There is the attractiveness of the institution to faculty and investing in faculty, and then there is this specific and extremely important, and all are important questions. There is a huge amount of work that we're putting into operationalizing, of course, because there is so much pressure to deliver on these multiple fronts. We're not moving as quickly, and sometimes, we have to make decisions to prioritize something and delay something, and it's not always the right decision and so on, but at least we're driven to work on multiple fronts. The first thing, we had a land challenge. Even before I stepped in, I worked with the AUC lead team to draw on previous plans and to put them all coherently as plans that, as some of you mentioned, they were developed and forgotten. We revived them, not necessarily in the exact format they were. We learned from them. We put them together into a coherent academic vision. We started working on securing, and this, believe me, it wasn't an easy task, securing a resolution to the land challenge that we're facing, which requires that we deliver, that we build, that we expand. We cannot not expand. For a year and a quarter, to be very specific, we were making the case, but we didn't know what the path forward would be. Now we have a breakthrough. We have a path forward, hopefully that, again, I don't want to jinx it, but it's a very realistic way forward, and it's not as demanding in terms of having to develop everything immediately. We immediately started working on mobilizing the financial resources. We restructured the advancement office. It takes time to recruit the right, and we still are in the process of recruiting. We did that, but the decision to restructure was even before I stepped foot on campus. I came for a visit, but before I started. With the decision to restructure, to make sure that the Vice President for Advancement is here, is working with our academics on developing the plans and also restructuring the operations. We applied for a loan. I don't know if we're going to be taking the loan, but we are way advanced and there are good opportunities of having a successful. We may not need all of it. If we have alternatives, we will go for that. But we're working on simultaneous, and we're working on the structure of the programmatic structure of the programs that we want to introduce, and also their operational model, because these are operations that will cost money, and so we're working simultaneously on all of these fronts. In some cases, we're more advanced than other cases, but we're working simultaneously on this, and now we have a path forward. We had the challenge of devaluation. We made interventions. No one is I'm not completely satisfied with the interventions that we made, but we put our best effort to try to respond as quickly as at a time when we need to work on strategic priorities, we work on dealing with immediate challenges. So we are working on operationalizing. And if anything, we're working too fast. You know, I honestly, I'm saying this in all honesty, I wish I had more time to think a little bit about the things that we need to, you know, to act on the move very quickly. We don't have the luxury of waiting. But if this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do, and we will do it. And again, the key, you're right. You can have the best slogans, and they will remain slogans if we don't collectively, as a university, take ownership. I am a facilitator. At the end of the day, the university will have to deliver this work, not me individually. I'll do my best to facilitate this, but ultimately this has to be delivered by everyone in the university. So we need to get on board, help shape these. Again, this is work in progress. It's not final. There are other ideas that will come up, and whatever you mentioned, Middle East studies, it's a big thing. I came when Lisa Anderson was the president of AUC. I was provost at AUE. It was right before the events. So we came, and I agreed with Lisa that we should work on building a joint PhD program between AAB and AUC, because there is no PhD program in Middle Eastern Studies in the region. Things happened. I was no longer provost. Things happened in Egypt. This wasn't a priority and whatever. Now we have a Carnegie grant to help us develop a Middle East, a 2-year grant to help us structure and develop a Middle Eastern Studies PhD program. We have to develop it, not because it's a comfortable thing to do, because if we don't do it, no one else will. There is no Middle Eastern Studies PhD program in the Middle East. Our voice is not part of this global academic conversation on the Middle East. The best universities in the US are represented. We're consumers, we're not producers. We have to implant ourselves in this conversation. And we have a road forward. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna deliver it. I have to work with the community of Middle Eastern Studies scholars, which is half of our faculty, by the way. Because the economists work on the Middle East, everyone works on the Middle East, as opposed to other universities elsewhere. We have an embarrassment of riches. We can do it, we should do it, we'll work on doing it. I'll do what I can to facilitate this process, hopefully we will. But this is only one example, it's not the only thing. So we're working, sometimes it doesn't look fast enough, but if you consider that we're working simultaneously on so many different fronts, it's really, if anything, it's way too fast. On the faculty, I will say it and I will repeat it again. The university stands on the shoulders of faculty. This university is an important university. It's recognized, and it's truly recognized. It's recognized as a unique institution in this region. It's the best in American higher education, but it is in and of the region and not any place in the region. It's in Egypt. I'm not born in Egypt. I'm not chauvinistic about it. But this is the reality. Egypt is a different country. This university is important. It's recognized as important. And it stands on the shoulders of its faculty. There is a lot that we can do, and the faculty are there, so the faculty are not enablers. The enablers support the faculty, it's not. This said, there are also challenges, there is work that we need to do, and I've always told the faculty, I don't work to please. I try to do the right thing, but honestly and as transparently as I can and so on. My intention is to work with the faculty and to enable the faculty. We need to do it within the environment in which we operate, and we need to be all part of a conversation to move forward. But this is work. This is not done. It's not a done deal. I'm not going to answer you by saying, oh, the faculty are fine. And we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But not only that, I need the faculty to take ownership, because they are the leaders of the university and it stands on their shoulders. On academic freedom, you see, academic freedom, I've been asked this question when I was offered the job before I even started. There was an interview, and what are you going to do about academic freedom? Yes, academic freedom is an essential. Academic institutions excel because of academic freedom, because people have the space to think freely about whatever they're doing. It could be in any field, but if you put restrictions, this is important. But the reality of life also, we all need, we have to be law-abiding citizens, we need to work within frameworks, and this is not Egypt, this is the whole world. That said, I think, you know, in my experience so far, I think there is so much good work that we are doing and can do within the space that's offered to us. We're doing good work. So, you know, people on the outside tend to paint a very grim picture. Everything is doom and gloom. I don't agree with that, and I've taken that argument. We've had a panel at Mesa, and I've made that argument in Mesa, you know, with my colleagues, and I, you know, I invited them to come and participate and to be part of it. And there are ways in which we could expand this space available to us, while we're working realistically within the context in which we're operating. I believe there is already a huge amount of good work which is being done here, and we could even increase this work, I hope.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. We did have a few more questions, especially from staff members on Zoom, so maybe you can look into these later, but unfortunately, we're over our allotted time, and I know some people need to go to class. So what is left is to thank you, I guess. Thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this afternoon. There is coffee and donuts, and I think we can continue. Those who don't have to rush to class, you can continue your informal conversation later.
Thank you.
Thank you
Dr.
very
Amina.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.